India in the once-in-a-century global change that is underway. So I'll start with my conclusions, give my conclusions, and then explain as to how I have arrived at the conclusions. So my conclusions are that 80% of the world population that we call Global South, which is the developing countries, the less developed countries, or what used to be called the third world countries, in my assessment, they are moving towards stability, certainty, and hope. And this is the new world that is being created. On the other side, 20% of the population of the world, which is the industrialized nations, the global north, they are mired in uncertainty and instability. And it is this lot that is moving towards a sharp decline. India has chosen, because of its colonial mindset, to be a part of the global north. And what I see India's foreign policy, at least for the last 10 years, that is a projectionist policy that does not really help improve the lives of India's poor. And my last conclusion is, I expect that in about 10 years' time, by 2035, this new global order will stabilize. Why? I'll explain. Now I go to the start of my talk with those conclusions. Now you see, one of the most spectacular, unexpected thing that has happened in the world in this century has been the rise of China. And it is because of the rise of China that in 2012, President Obama, he ordered the pivot to Asia. Now, pivot to Asia meant that 60% of the US military assets, they would be moved to the Asia-Pacific region under the American Pacific Command to contain the rise of China. That was the idea. Alongside, what happened was that the geopolitics of the world, for the first time, it shifted from transatlantic to Asia-Pacific, our region. Because suddenly now all the great powers, they had an interest in this region. This became the region of economic activity and military contestation. So India suddenly found itself, all this while since independence, India's foreign policy had to be crafted because it was a fringe nation. The center of gravity of the world was elsewhere, as I said. Now suddenly it was in the middle of the whole thing, which is the reason that the great powers of the world, they all wanted India for different reasons. Now when I talk of a great power, what am I talking about? A nation which has three attributes. First is a country which has the capability to influence events anywhere in the world. That's a great power. Then a great power is a country which can defend its sovereignty all by itself. And the third attribute is a nation that cannot be intimidated, coerced by any other country to change its policy or its action. That's a great power. When we look at these three criteria, only three countries qualify, and they are America, China, and Russia. Now, we have heard from the Americans say, at least from the first Trump administration, that America this century will be in a contest with China. So this is what they've been saying, this is what the global north believes, and this is exactly what the Indians also believe, all the analysts, because I've never heard anybody say anything contrary. So the thing is, one thinking is that America will be in a contest with China in this century, but there's another thinking. And that is that this first thinking is incorrect. America actually is in a contest this century with the global South nations, which have the backing of a new global governance system, which is totally backed by two great powers, and they are China and Russia, and these are the powers which bring a lot of things on the table. For example, as far as China is concerned, it is the largest manufacturing country in the world, and as far as Russia is concerned, it has the largest natural resources in the world that any country has, something around $75 trillion. So the point is, three things have happened when we say in this once-in-a-century change. The first is that the geopolitics has shifted to Asia-Pacific. Second is that there are today three great powers, America, China, and Russia. And the third is that there is a concept that people are not aware of. And that concept is a new global governance system. So that is what we need to understand. Now we know that America won the Cold War. It won the Cold War based on balance of power politics, where it only spoke about a zero-sum game. Security was absolute security. What that meant was that if I have to win, then you have to lose. Because everything was predicated on America's military power. So this was American power, and they won the Cold War in 1991. Soviet Union demise happened. And from 1991 and until 2012, as I said, when the pivot to Asia was ordered by Obama, it was a unipolar world. There was a single global hegemon, the superpower America. So the Americans, in these years, they framed the rules for the world. They decided what the world will do, what will be the institution and how they'll work. And therefore, under their benediction, globalization happened, globalization of trade. But now the world has become multipolar. But if you see in that thinking of the Americans and the global north, it is all about domination. So that effect, that hubris has not gone away, which is the reason that when the world today is multipolar, we still hear from senior officials of the Trump administration threatening India publicly every day, telling India not to buy Russian oil, Russian weapons, not to have any dealings with Iran. So this is the framework, or this is the thinking which is about domination. Now I come to this new global governance system that I mentioned, that perhaps not many in this country even understand what it is about. See, it all started in 2012. And the first overseas visit that he had was in March 2013, and he went to Russia. And then had a long talk in Russia with President Putin. The two leaders, they realized that they actually had a new vision for the world. So once that was understood, and the two leaders were happy with that, on the same trip, also addressed the Moscow State Institute of International Relations, where he gave two very important concepts. I wish the people in this country try and understand those concepts. So the first concept was a new type of international relations built on geoeconomics. And the second was community of shared future for mankind. I need to elaborate both a bit. Now, when we talk of geoeconomics, a new type of international relations, we are talking of trade. And when we are talking of trade, it is very obvious that every country should have the liberty, should have the strategic autonomy to decide with which country you want to do trade and with which country you don't want to do trade. That means there should be mutual respect. That means there should be equality. That means you should work under the United Nations. So the point to make here is that in the multipolar world that these two great powers talk about, and where they talk about new type of international relations, they are actually talking about strategic autonomy to all the countries. And how many countries are there? 193 countries are there today under the United Nations. So big or small, they should have the liberty to decide what exactly they want to do and where they do the trade. So that is one part. So therefore, when I hear from our External Affairs Minister Jaishankar talk about that I have strategic autonomy, India has strategic autonomy to decide you want to be with this or with that, the point is in this thinking, every country has strategic autonomy in this new thinking, because after all we say, India says that we are part of the global south. Now, Jaishankar then also talks about that, because of strategic thinking, I can decide that I'll do trade with, I'll talk with Europe, I'll talk with so-and-so. What he's talking about then is power centers. He's talking about blocks. So the first point was about trade. Now, if you have to do trade and if you have to look at development, it is absolutely critical that peace be there. And peace cannot be absolute. So therefore, what is required is a common peace, a common security, a relative security, not absolute security. What that means is that all the countries which have a problem, they should ideally all come inside the tent. They should all be inside the tent, and there should be communications, and there, the difficult issues, they should be able to discuss with one another. When I say difficult, that means their core concerns. And this is precisely what President Putin in 2024 called, he gave this concept of Eurasian security architecture. This is precisely about relative security, something that in my country, the government doesn't understand. They'll look for absolute security because the focus should be on development. That is the key thing, according to this sort of thinking. And the same thing, what Putin said was earlier said in 2022 when he gave the concept of global security initiative. So this is one part. This is about new type of international relations. Now the second part, which is about community of shared future of mankind. Now I want to just tell the audience here, I'm not trying to put across a point here, but the thing is that I have traveled. I understand the Russian point of view. I understand the point of view even of the small countries in my neighborhood. They all share this point of view that I'm talking about. And as I said, there is a vision of Russia vision and today the Chinese vision, which is completely aligned for the new century, once in a century change that is happening now. So under this shared future, what we are talking about is two things again. As far as the Chinese are concerned, they are talking about national rejuvenation. And they are talking about the shared future for the mankind. And these both, they complement one another, they support one another. The whole idea is that first the nation has to be strong, that is national rejuvenation. And after that, then the nation goes out and then helps the other country create a community of shared future. I mean, there are lessons for India in this. So, when we talk of national rejuvenation, I have already said that China today is the largest manufacturing nation in the world. 31% of the world manufacturing happens in China. Then China is the innovator. Most of the industrial supply chains, they end up in China. Most of the value supply chains, the entire stacks, they end up in China. Then China is building up its internal capacities to support both these supply chains. All this is happening. And then as far as the shared future is concerned, we know in 2013, the Chinese gave the concept, which is the Belt and Road Initiative, which of course now has gone further into digital Silk Road. So under the Belt and Road Initiative, whether Indians and the Americans call it a debt trap or whatever, the reality is that out of 193 countries of the world, 151 countries have joined the Belt and Road Initiative of China. Which is why I said it is not about China. America is not competing with China. America today is competing with the global South, where the Belt and Road Initiative has gone, and it has gone to the African continent, it has gone to Latin America and Caribbeans, it has gone to the Pacific Oceans, which we called Oceania, it has gone to Southeast Asia, it has gone to Middle East, it has gone to the entire Eurasian landmass. That is what we are talking about. Now, once we understand, get this correct, then there are two institutions which have been created under this new global governance system. And one is BRICS. And BRICS again, when you look at the foundation of BRICS, that comes from RIC, which is Russia, India, China. For whatever reason, India's contribution in this was never much. Because this whole idea of RIC, it came from the Russians. From the Russian Foreign Minister Primikov, who in the late 90s, because Russia is a huge landmass, they have a foreign policy which looks east as well as west. So to counterbalance the West, because they always have been great strategists, to counterbalance the West, he thought of getting these three countries, the populous countries, together and create this concept of RIC. The other two countries went along with Primikov's idea, and very soon the Chinese caught up, because the Chinese strength was their economy. So they realized that, yes, we can also contribute meaningfully into RIC. But the Indians went along. Now it is this RIC that grew into BRICS, and today it is BRICS Plus. And today we have 10 BRICS members, 10 BRICS plus members, and President Trump is terrified of BRICS. Why? Because BRICS contributes 39% GDP to the global economy, and BRICS today has a combined population of about 40% of the world, which is their GDP is more than that of the G7, which is why Trump and the global north, they are worried about this. On the other side, then there is what is called the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now this grew, this was in the 90s, but this came, it was called Shanghai 5. But it was only in 2001 that this name was given to it, which is Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And earlier the focus was terrorism. But now after it became SCO, then they started looking at indivisible security. What I said is the common security, which is a relative security. So that became their focus. So basically what these two organizations were doing is looking at the two strengths of America and how to take them on, how to dilute them. Because one strength of America is its military power. Even today, America has something like 800 military bases across the globe. So they look at absolute security. This system looks at, I said, relative security, or what is called indivisible security. And as far as BRICS is concerned, their key focus was on taking on the other strength of America, which is the American dollar and the dollar payment system. So it was not to replace the dollar, it is to displace the dollar. And plenty of work has happened in displacing the dollar. And recently we had the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in China, where even Prime Minister Modi was gone, but that was for an entirely different reason why he went there. So there they have merged the two. In other words, what we will see very soon is that these two organizations will come together. So this is what is happening here. And by the way, one thing I want to make it very clear, that in this system, the existing institutions, because a lot of people say that the Bretton Woods, institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, this thinking, it wants to discard those. No, it does not want to do that. In fact, it wants to work with them closely. Next. Here is the question. How will this world order stabilize? That's the question. And that will happen because of the fourth industrial technologies which are underway. The induction of the fourth industrial technologies. We know that the first and the second industrial revolution that happened in the West, the third industrial revolution, computers, internet, that all happened in America. And now the fourth industrial revolution, which is about artificial intelligence, which is about green technologies, big technologies, both these countries, they are neck to neck, China and America. So that is where things are moving now. And as far as the Chinese are concerned, a lot of work they are doing. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are aware of artificial intelligence, and they are aware of the stack of the artificial intelligence. When we talk of the stack of the artificial intelligence, we are talking about hardware. And hardware today, China and America, they are neck to neck. Why I say that is because this was said precisely by Jensen Huang, who is the CEO of NVIDIA. Recently he was asked and he said that, look, they are just nanoseconds behind us. So hardware, it's neck to neck. Software, the Chinese are good. Human talent, the Chinese are very good. And as far as data is concerned, Chinese have it. And as far as applications and integration of AI is concerned, well, they are way ahead of America. Because it has long been said that as far as Americans are concerned, they do the innovation, the commercialization, and earning the money is done by the Chinese. So the point to make here is that this is where I believe that by 2030, why I say 2030 is because the Chinese in 2017 gave a plan which is called the AI Development Plan. And Eric Schmidt, who is a former CEO of Google, according to him, his explanation is that by 2030, when this plan will be done, the Chinese will dominate the AI industries of the world. That is what he has said. So give another 5 years. So by 2035, what will happen is, when you extrapolate, when you look ahead how things are, that maximum countries of the world, which is the global south, as I said, that is the new world order, they will have the industries based on artificial intelligence and of the Chinese. This is where the world is going. In other words, when you bring in the green technology, the new industries, or you bring in the AI industries, you're talking of standards. Standards is the key thing. So what is happening right now in the world is, as far as the internet is concerned, it's already split. We are talking about splinternet. So there are subsea cables which are of the Chinese, and there are subsea cables which are of the Americans. And along with that, what will happen is, sometimes around 2030 until 2035, we'll be seeing that there will be two streams of technologies. One, the American technology, and one, the Chinese technology. And all this tech war that Trump or the Biden administration were doing with China, that will stabilize for the simple reason that standards will be set. So many countries in the world would have taken this technology or that technology. So this is one way that things will stabilize.